Before I get to the clip of Noam Chomsky discussing how stupid Kissinger was as an academic, I want to briefly discuss Chomsky's views on Kissinger's foreign policy, and following the clip there will be specific cases and Chomsky's overall stance on Kissinger. Chomsky criticizes Kissinger's support for U.S. interventionism in various countries, particularly Southeast Asia, Vietnam War, Cambodia, Latin America, Chilean coup, and East Timor. He argues these interventions caused immense suffering and undermined democratic aspirations. Chomsky takes issue with Kissinger's embrace of realpolitik, prioritizing power and strategic interests over human rights and ethical considerations. He accuses Kissinger of supporting dictatorships and committing war crimes in pursuit of U.S. goals. Chomsky also criticizes Kissinger's application of different standards to different countries, often condemning human rights abuses by U.S. adversaries while downplaying similar actions by allies. Now to this provocative clip of Noam Chomsky.
This is one of the things that dumbfounds me. I personally feel incredibly privileged to be born in a small village in Bangladesh, growing up in a rural community. Trying to understand how do we take people like Kissinger? How do we, like your essay, the roles of intellectuals have shaped the perception of many people who want to join in resistance. Kissinger was a professor at Harvard University. And when I think about, like you just have mentioned, that the slavery, the cotton was the oil at that time. I taught economics for almost 20 years. And I think about it is that when I was teaching economics in high school to my students, I was teaching that the British curriculum, of course, is that the advantage of, market economy, all the good things, the structural adjustment policies bringing. And you see Nobel Prize winning economists like Milton Friedman saying that the economic progress of America had nothing to do with, slavery. It had nothing to do with, brutal exploitation of, colonialism. Instead, sort of like colonialism has done favor to parts of the world that was stagnant. We grew up reading scholars like Milton Friedman, or particularly Karl Marx. Help us, giving us some guideline that how do we approach this intellectual giants established in academic circles like Kissinger, a murderer, I know, an architect of genocide. We read people like Milton Friedman. How do we approach these intellectual giants and look at them critically, not accepting what they're just saying, for its face value?
Well, first of all, we should be careful about the phrase intellectual giant. I'll tell you an anecdote. In the 1960s, before Kissinger had risen to great heights, he was a professor at Harvard, teaching foreign policy, international affairs. I was teaching undergraduate courses at MIT, right down the river from Harvard, courses on American history, international affairs, and so on, things I write about. I tried to use Kissinger's academic essays, not the ones he's famous for, the academic essays on American history. The undergraduate students at MIT were rolling in the aisles. They couldn't believe the stupidity of what he was writing. I had to stop using it. I'll give you the lead example. This is the great professor at Harvard. One of his articles, you can look it up in his book on American foreign policy back in the 1960s. He has an article called The Statesman and the Prophet. And what he argues is he's trying to look very deeply intellectual and so on. So he says the real problems of the world are not war and genocide and famine. Those are superficial problems. The real problem, he says, is a divide between the West and everyone else. the West underwent the Newtonian revolution and understands that there's a world independent of the person. The rest of the world hasn't understood this yet. So we are trying to send a message to the Vietnamese. We bomb them and tell them to let us take over, but they don't understand. They probably think it's a headache. They don't know that there's a world out there separate from them. You can't ask MIT students to read this, and they don't even think it's a comic strip. It's impossible. You have to be really brainwashed deeply to be able to read this and not break out in laughter and ridicule. The intellectual level is nothing very much. We're talking about very mediocre individuals who do understand power and know how to serve power and to work for it. Kissinger understands very well. He once made a comment about what are called policy intellectuals, the intellectuals who make it into the centers of power and give advice and so on. He said their role is to translate the wishes of the powerful into actual policy. That's it. We're the servants who serve the powerful. We shine their shoes, and we take what they tell us and we turn it into something that can be applied. So if Nixon wants to bomb Cambodia, I send the order saying anything that flies against anything that moves. If Nixon wants to make a breakthrough with China and make it exciting, I decide to murder huge numbers of people in Bangladesh because that's what's important.
Some of the specific cases that Chomsky strongly condemns of Kissinger's role in is, for example, Kissinger's role in the 1973 coup that overthrew Salvador Allende's democratically elected government in Chile, leading to widespread human rights abuses. Chomsky views the Vietnam War as a disastrous intervention orchestrated by Kissinger, causing immense suffering and failing to achieve stated objectives. Chomsky accuses Kissinger of cynically abandoning East Timor to Indonesian invasion and occupation, leading to widespread violence and bloodshed. Chomsky viewed Kissinger as a powerful architect of U.S. foreign policy that prioritized power and interventionism over democracy, human rights, and international law. He often refers to him as a war criminal and believed he should have been held accountable for his actions. I hope you liked this video and subscribe to the channel. Now take care and bye-bye.